collective knowledge and experience of our dear guests, because all of them will be participating, I think, in a very an active way in this discussion. I would first like to extend my thanks to His Highness Sheikh Mohammed Kiba for the opportunity, and I also would like to extend my thanks to the dear panelists here for being and sharing their lifetime experience. Our ladies and gentlemen guests will be introduced. I will introduce them as the order by appointment. Alessandro Fercher, Dana Ferrato, Maria Meloni, and Ptolemy Davis is our speaker. My name is Farid Khazi. I am from Jordan. I'll be the host. And time is of an essence, so I'm going to move in quickly because we only have like I said, an hour and a half, including the time given for this last photo storytelling or photo essay. It will only be struggling for the next 1 or 2 seconds because I'm going to immediately answer this question. This is photography because, after all, what's only 200 years in photography compared to 40,000 years of art, carving and drawing in the cave. So photography just picked up this art for the last 200 years, but humans have really, you see, the old messages that told us the story of men hunting, using tools, and practicing rituals, and told us stories about war, love, harvest, and so many things. We have seen this in drawings and chairs that are as old as centuries ago. So we only utilize photography to tell these stories by the means of the camera, but it's not something new to view. And it seems that man has an ever present urge to tell that tale. Everybody wants to tell this story. Everybody wants to leave behind something for the generations to come, or to tell people far away. For example, I always think, why would Red Indians use hospitals? Why do Muslims and tribal people use drums? Everybody has grown into us now with the use of media, so we can create art. But we're only filling our air as humans to tell our story to others through all these movies. It is an ancient, ancient as man. So I say we only take it up recently in the last couple of centuries. I want to sit down to really for this book because it's depictions in this case and also an art known as tri-space. I'm sure some of you are aware what tri-space is. This is a drawing of three photos put next to each other that will tell you a short story. It's things like in the mid-ages that they went and grew in the church and with presenting religious ideas. But what I'm going to say is, these images are so powerful and so intense that they should not need any passion or text to go with. Yes, we are able to understand the portrait and the embedded idea that these people 40,000 years ago wanted to tell us. No looking at pictures, no text, no caption. And the message was well received for tell us that this is, I say, how powerful, vivid, meaningful, and well-studied our storytelling photos should be. This has to be important in providing such photos with such color, such clarity for people to comprehend. What I think is, aside from dates and names, in my opinion, a photo essay or photo portfolio should tell the whole story. The only thing I might not know what the names of the people involved or what dates they were. And yet, by some treatment or using some angle taking pictures of I don't know, newspapers, calendars, I might be able to even relay that message in my story. I will now, after this short introduction, invite you to ask four questions to our dear panelists. I'm starting with Donna, and each of them will have 4 to 6 minutes to speak about as answer to the gentleman audience. And the first question goes to Donna, and Donna, how important is it to find a subject, story, and reveal evidence that is both original and teaches the intellect of the reader? So, would you please give me the finding and
Mr. Tariq and my fellow judges and all of you, I've been photographing for more than...
we need the mic.
Okay. I thought I wanted to have a booming voice like yours. But all right, I'll use the mic. But no, this is good. This is good. Gives me something to hold tight. Yeah. Cudgel. But I have had very strong opinions about being a photographer for all the 4 decades that I've been photographing, actually. I take pictures, real pictures, for real people. I don't really care about, of course, photo competitions and photo schools and agencies are important, but I'm really trying to get to the heart and soul of real people. Therefore, my intentions as a photographer must have the highest integrity, because I'm searching for justice for the people that I'm photographing. When I get into people's lives, I don't know where it's going to take me. I know that I have to make really good pictures, so my compositions have to be perfect. If I'm into a situation where it's all dark in the room, I need to have a flash in my camera bag that I can quickly put on and know how to use that flash, whether to bounce it into the ceiling or off a wall. Or I have to know how to use all the means of immediate lighting in situations where things are happening so quickly and there's nobody else around but me and the people that I am photographing. You're asking me about how to tell stories that are original and tease the intellect, and how to find the subjects and the stories and the tale to tell. But for me, the most important thing has always been the access. How do I get the access into people's lives? Because I never want to be on the surface. If people say, "Oh, Donna, come to my house," of course, you can take some pictures here. Stay in the living room. We're going to go cook in the kitchen and we'll be out. I'm going to follow them into the kitchen. If they're in the nighttime, they're sleeping in their rooms and I'm sleeping out in the living room sofa, I'm going to go into their room, their bedroom, if I hear them starting to argue loudly. And whenever I'm staying with people, I always say to them, I need to be able to go anywhere at any time. I hope you can handle that. And they kind of laugh. This was, my response, the response I got many years ago, N- because people didn't expect me to go into their bedrooms, but I do. I will go in there, I will sit, I will watch. If I need to hear what's happening on one side or the other side, I will move around like that. I'm going to give you a couple examples of the ways that my mind changes when I'm into a story. The very first one is the story of a man beating his wife in front of me. When I started out with that tale about a couple that I thought were the most beautiful couple I'd ever met, they had wealth, they had beautiful children, they lived in a mansion right next door to Richard Nixon. I thought they had it all. So my story about them was their happy family life, the swinging life. I felt that the woman was very liberated. I admired that because I'm a girl of the 60s, the 1960s, and I have always been fighting for women's liberation. So I thought that this woman was very liberated, and that's why I was attracted to them. I never in a million years thought that this story would lead me into a story about the abuse of women and children. It was not my plan. When that did occur, that scene in the bathroom where he began to beat her, and I came into the bathroom at that very moment as he began to hit her, I realized that my story that I had proposed to a Japanese magazine and had been accepted was finished. They didn't want the story when I showed them domestic violence. They said, sorry, you told us this was going to be a happy, exciting story about a couple that had a strong sexual life as well as a good family life. So that was finished with working for them. But it didn't stop me because I believe in the value of women. I don't believe that women should be invisible. I don't believe that their pain should be invisible. I want people to see what women feel, what we go through. So it was really important to me to stay with them for as long as I could, and then to go around to find other women in these situations. And I worked very hard over 10 years to find as many women going through domestic violence and coming out of it as I could. Another situation was when I started to do a story for Life magazine on domestic, even in the very early days. I didn't wait for magazines to give me an assignment. I had an idea of what I wanted to understand better, and I tried to figure out how I would find some answers or, give me the material so that I could start to wrap my mind around what was the problem. So with this story about domestic violence in Soweto, I had heard that it was a big problem. Life gave me permission to go there. I didn't have a writer, so no one was recording things for me. Nobody gets my model releases. I have to do all of that work myself. I'm a one-woman show operation, however you want to call it. But when I went to Soweto and I went to the Baragwanath Hospital, and I saw how many children were coming in all the time who'd been victims of sexual assault. And I realized that it was coming from their fathers, their uncles, the drivers, the neighbors. And I saw how scared the children were and how resigned the mothers were. And the kind of assaults that were happening, I realized that I had to change my focus to sexual assault of children. And I called, oh no, sorry, this wasn't for Life magazine, this was for the New York Times Sunday magazine. So I changed in midstream right away. And I spent the next month there working with the children, working with the courts, working with the cops, working with the families, going around meeting all the families, hanging out with them, getting to know them. This is how I work. You have to know who you are. You really have to know who you are when you go out to take pictures. You don't want to shoot like everybody else. You don't want to shoot like the person who was your teacher at one point, or the Salgado, or somebody who's famous. It's good to know who you respond to and to know the kind of work that you admire, but go beyond it. I never wanted to be like anybody else. I always had my own feelings. As I said, I knew my own worth. I did not want anybody to ever put me down or make me feel worthless or devalue me, and I didn't want it for any other woman. So I knew that I had to fight every day, even to get an assignment. After that story that I did for the Japanese magazine, nobody wanted to publish my pictures. I worked for 3 years getting these stories for Life magazine. They didn't want to publish it. They didn't recognize that I had the integrity because they had never seen pictures of domestic violence. No one had ever photographed it. There were no laws against domestic violence in the early 80s. The shelters were underground. Nobody knew about it. So I took it upon myself to go out there in the world and look for truth, look for suffering, look for redemption. I wanted to see women and children getting out. I wanted to see men changing. I didn't want to see men as the monsters all the time. I would go into the men's programs. I would live in their houses. So I could see people going through things, many changes over a long period of time.
So what was mentioned that realizing domestic violence only became apparent in the United States in 1973. Before that, it was concealed thing that people did not speak about. I think much of that could be regarded to honest work. And this is, as we know, person everywhere. And I think the passion Donna speaks with also related to her being a woman defending her position in a world dominated by male photographers. But she wanted to make a case for domestic violence and for women at the same time. This just kind of sum it up.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, we're moving now to the second panel, which is Solomon. Photo essay or photo portfolio is making a comeback. It needs to be much stronger before the movies or before the video and the ability to do video in the easy way that we do. But it's making a comeback because it's an art that people like, and it's becoming stronger now after maybe, I'd say, cooling period of 50, but it's becoming and pushing back to be in the upside. There is a statement that needs to be said every time we plan a photo portfolio. The statement is, there is no room for random shots. You cannot make several random shots and expect to have an essay. It has to be well prepared, well designed. So follow me now when say, how do we plan a successful story essay or photo portfolio?
Hello? Hello? Is it working? Yeah. Yeah. So I just want to talk a little bit about how I feel the word photo essay is a little redundant, and I don't think I don't put as much value to it as I did when I started out photography, because everything for me was to make those 8 pictures and then those 15 pictures and then those 30 photos. But I feel like we should really be talking about projects rather than portfolio. You give it a better term and work on something that we think has a more long-term vision rather than just talking about photo essays. One of the most important thing about making good projects is that you have to be really true to your work. You need to know what your voice is, you need to know what your vision is, and you need to know what is it that you want to say about the world. So it's really important that you have that idea have that idea of knowing what you want to say about the world. And by that I mean, like, not all of us have something to say about the world, but I think that all of us should be able to have something to say about the world. And these things come really from your own experiences, largely, because as photographers, we're also artists, and what we do in a way to talk about our work is by, many ways make ourselves vulnerable and show you a part of a slice of our lives and our work, and that directly determines the kind of work we then go on to making. So it's really important that you're honest and true about the work you're going to make and the work you're going to put in your portfolio or your projects. Another important element especially about selecting a portfolio for your or make a project, is plan to your strengths. As when you said about no random shots, especially if you're working with single pictures, then more considered photos work better. Like if they're slower photos, especially if it's a portrait or maybe a photo that can quickly grab your attention, whether it's a decisive moment, like as people used to say back in the days. Then those are the kind of pictures that work as single photos, and single photos are often very powerful, and we can't, even in this day of being inundated with millions and millions of photos every day, it's really important to find pictures that slow us down and photos that hit you hard, very hard in the gut. And only photos that are very personal. By personal, I mean it doesn't always have to be about your life, but it has to have that personal vision, coming back again to being true to your work and having your own vision. Only work that has that vision is going to make your work that sort of precious or powerful, So it's very hard to make single photos, because in today's world where we're seeing an inundation of imagery, how do we make those single photos work or hold? They're really important, but I think their value right now is greater, and to make those single photos is harder than it ever was before. The other thing I wanted to talk about is the importance of stories in a portfolio. And when you're trying to tell stories in a portfolio connection, there's many factors, right? You need to have clarity of thought, you need to have a vivid way of expressing the work. And one of the most important things in storytelling is to have, it's similar to, in a way, of making a film, although I think it's very hard in photography to have a full grasp of narrative the way cinema has, but still it's important to have a beginning, middle, and end to your work, and I think that gives the portfolio the project a good sort of value. But having said that, it's also important to note that having an end in a project is always not the best thing. Like when you're designing a project or a portfolio, you might have a beginning and a middle, but you may not necessarily have an end. Or the end could be something that becomes a sequel to the next part of your project, So it doesn't necessarily need to have an end, An end could be something that gives you the desire or the longing to see more of your work, So that is the most important thing, because you want the person who's looking at your work to experience what you're showing and to want more of that work, And if you have a clear ending of the work, then it doesn't kind of work, right? So it's nice to have work that has the power of longing, rather than an end. Another essential part about having a portfolio is, I think in today's world, we need to speak about is agency. And it's important to see how much agency your subjects in the portfolio is having in the work. By agency, I mean how much determination of the person you're photographing has control over their own life. Is that coming through your work or not? I think it's really important we answer these questions. And it's extremely important for the audience, because the audience needs to understand what the audience is experiencing while they're looking at your portfolio. Are they feeling empathy? Are they feeling, are they falling in love with something? Are they feeling full of hate? Is the work making them angry? Are they going to go after seeing the work, are they going to go out and do something about the work they've just seen? So it's really important you arouse emotions in your audience and people who are experiencing your work. There has to be that powerful element of some form of agency that the people who are after seeing your portfolio can leave and then say, okay, I want to do something about this.
And try to.
Yeah.
Okay.
And the last thing I would really want to say is the political.
Okay.
So there's a bridge between the two. So
Exactly.
yeah, thank you.
Thank you. So I think what Polomi has talked about is she started with being honest. You have to believe in what you want to do and be honest about it and feel strongly about it. And then have a well-planned schedule of what you want to do. I would like to disagree with her a little bit about not having an end. We'll come to this later. I think every story should have an end, because I might see your work today, I might not see it tomorrow. It's something personal. That's how you want to show it. But I want to see the whole image for that part. The second thing is, when you shoot a beginning, a middle, and an end, you don't have to really take it by that order. You have so many people you're dealing with, and sometimes you shoot the ending and then the middle and then but in the very beginning, you should have an idea how these photos are going to fit from 1 to 8, from 1 to 10, from 1 to 15. But sometimes you somehow shoot the ending and then you rearrange them and put them back in order. So I am now going to direct my question to Alejandro. And because we have so many beautiful girls and ladies here, I'm going to be very lenient on him. So I'm going to ask him a very simple question. You ready, right? So Alejandro, the question is really easy. And it goes, how can a photographer evoke or awaken the emotions in the viewer's hearts? I mean, yeah, is it on? Okay. Yeah.
I'm going to use this. So, thank you, Tariq. And thanks everyone for being here. Yeah, okay. So, when Tariq asked this question 30 minutes before this panel started, just to make some thoughts about this, I just wrote down a couple of thoughts related to this question, and I guess most of the things I've written have been just said by Donna and Polomi. So I just basically endorse what they are saying. They were very, very complete.
Can I help you with something?
Yeah.
Could you please talk about the photo of your grandparents, where your grandmother is behind the door and she's extending a hand to your grandfather? Just tell us about that.
Okay.
And I think everybody will just love the idea and really grasp what you're trying to tell us. Just say that.
Okay, I will. But just first, I'm talking about the question. So I basically think one of the most important things is picking a subject, and it's related, of course, to this photo you're mentioning as well. So picking a subject for me is one of the most important decisions when photographing, and I think the interesting thing of this part of choosing what to photograph, it's very particular and very interesting, because there is no formula. Usually people ask, so well, how do you pick your subjects? How do you choose what's your project about? And there is no answer that not only for different photographers that can be the same for different photographers, but for myself as a photographer in different projects, the answer is always different on why I choose one project or the other one. So I think basically I believe it's very important to be somehow connected with what we are photographing, and this doesn't mean that it should be your family. In my case, my first long-term project was about my family, my grandparents. I photographed them for many years, and of course it was very personal because it was my family. But then the other projects I pursued, there wasn't about my family, but somehow they were also very personal, and I think that is very important. So it's one of the most important things to.
Let me just stop you for
Yeah.
a minute.
Yeah.
Why does your or her personal story, why should I love it? Tell me that. Why should I like your own vision of something? This is, you say it's personal. Okay,
Yeah.
I agree, but why do I like it? Why do I have to like it?
I think it's.
This is the thing that
I think
we
it's
need
very
to know.
much is most about honesty, because I think when you are very interested about anything, this really can be seen in the photographs, and it's the same in literature. If a writer is writing about something he's really passionate about, you can, when you read it, you will be connected, because there is going to be something that is go beyond the images and the book. So I think that is another of the very important things, the honesty. Also, another thing I believe is very important in my work in general is time. Take time to the project. So working long term for me is not an option, but is a must. And always working, in a long-term period allows me not only to be more to go deeper in the subject, but also to understand better the subjects. So in the theme I've been working the last 5 years, it's very different how I see it now than 3 years ago. And I think there is like a maturity about every topic, and it's very important to take time and to give time. It's sometimes we are rushing very much. Social media pressures. You need to have your project done in 6 months to show it to an editor or to whatever. Yeah, and I think it's very important to take time and to work with your own times. And sometimes, sometimes you need 5 years, sometimes you need 10 years, but time is one of the other very important points. Yeah.
Thank you. What I grasped from what Alejandro said is the statement where he connected all forms of art and literature together. When he said it's about, he almost said it's about love, it's about pain, it's about crime, it's about passion. So everybody is interested in such things. So I think, in a way, this is you make your personal vision, because when somebody writes a story, he's telling us his view of what is going on. That's a written book. And with what we're doing here, in essence, we're doing exactly the same thing. We're relaying our feelings and how we see the story to others, to share us the point where we're looking things from, which is very good. Do you want to take a...
And talking about this photo Tariq was mentioning, it was one of the photos of the project of my grandparents. So basically my grandmother suffered for Alzheimer's disease for 5 years, and my grandfather, he was 87 when the disease began. He was a doctor, and he decided to dedicate his whole life to take care of my grandmother. So I just started as a very short project, but then I ended up shooting them for 3 years. And the photo is it's like the icon of the project, because it's my grandfather is taking my grandmother from her hand out of a dark door. So he's basically bringing her to the light and carrying her. And I think, well,
I'm sorry if I get you so passionate about it.
No.
I really, and my heart pours out for what you...
Yeah.
how you must feel about this.
Yeah, yeah, and it was, I think it was a photo I could make only after being like a lot of time in their apartment and learning very much about their routine and seeing how important was that moment for me in the concrete moment, but also what it represents that moment. So I guess only being like for long periods of time in their apartment allowed me to do that photo in
So
the
living
best way.
with them, basically, this is what we're saying.
Yeah,
Is
yeah.
living with them
Yeah.
enough time to be able to extract the. Thank you very much,
Absolutely.
Alejandro. Mariam has only one camera with one lens, and she said, "You just told me that."
No, I don't tell you that.
What did you? Did she not tell me that? She did tell me that. Okay. They said, okay, correct me for the misinformation you told me before.
I will explain you now.
Okay. Anyways, she accused me of asking her a technical question where she wanted to speak about something else. Actually, my question is not technical. It's, we know each of you, many of amongst you are photographers. Each of us photographers has his own style, his own preferences, his own aesthetics. We see things in different ways. We like to use certain equipment and to shoot and compose our photos in a different ways. But it's very personal. It's like a trademark for every photographer. But put in situations with such stories and intensities within venues and compelling and circumstances, we have to adapt. We have to be able to, like they say, leave our comfort zone, I don't know, whatever. But to be able to do other things to reach and to get where we want to get. So Mariam is going to tell us how to do this.
With one camera.
Yeah, you told me that.
No, I feel that in your question there are two levels, and there is some technical level, and there is one more personal level. So when speaking about technical level, I really need to make a difference about how I work on assignment and how I work on my personal project. So when I work on assignment, even if when editors call you and they told you that they want your style because they want you to make your picture in the same way that you are working in your personal project, often it's not totally true. I mean, when you're working on assignment, you have restriction about timing and about the way you're going to shoot. Often you are not allowed to shoot. For example, I shoot in analogic photographic now. I shoot film. I often don't manage to get an assignment with film, so I have to use digital camera. And I'm not really allowed to do what I want to do. So it's why I prepare in a completely different way. I use my digital camera, that is my second one, and I brought all the lenses that I have. I bring a flash, for
Yeah,
example.
but you set me up. You set me up.
Sorry.
Okay.
Sorry. So I prepare in a completely different way. I really try to make everything possible to don't get stuck in front of some problem like not have enough lighting or not have enough timing. When I work in personal project, I work in a completely different way. It's true. I'm since 2 years. I'm working with one camera and one lens. It's a medium format camera that just helped me to work in a completely different way. So I work with a completely different timing. And what is great with personal project is that if the lighting is not what you want the first day, you are probably going back the next day, and you are probably waiting. So you manage your time in a completely different way, and you manage the situation and the relation with the subjects in a completely different way. So going to the second level of your questions is how you manage circumstances with people. And I say with people because I think that when you work with people, you really can have bigger surprise. I mean, it's not the same be photographing landscape than to be photographing people. You don't know their reaction. You don't know them at all, probably. So when I think of what the mistake I did in my life, and mostly when I was starting, is that I was thinking so much about what I wanted to photography, then when I get in the place and I get to meet the people and I don't find what I want, I get frustrated. And when you are losing your time getting frustrated, a lot of interesting things are happening in front of you and you're not being able to catch them. So I just would suggest to young photographers to just try to not prepare themselves too much about what they are going to live and to photography, because live is probably much more interesting of everything you are going to prepare in your mind. And another thing very important is to left your prejudice when you are going to photography people. I remember one of the first projects I did, I met a young woman while doing a series of portraits in a crazy limousine. And I met her, and the first things that she told me that she was a prostitute. And I find it was an excellent idea to make work about a woman that was a prostitute, and I have a lot of idea of what should be the life of a prostitute. So I went to her home the first days, and I find a young woman with 2 children. And I say, oh, that's not like prostitution looked like in my mind. And I have to change completely my point of view of what the project could be. And the project turned out to be a project about a woman and her 2 children and the love and the family and all the kind of difficulty that a family can have when a mother is forced into prostitution. So to be able to adapt to the circumstances is not something technical. It's really adapt yourself to the people that you are working with, to the situation they are living with, and giving so much as you can when you are photographing.
Great. Mariam mentioned the perspective or the attitude of the photographer. I'm going to also add ego. Some of us photographers would approach stories as if they were our stories. They're not our stories. They're the stories of the people who are in the story. We are only providing the window for people to see. So if we let our ego get the best of us, we will lose the ability to tell without being unfair to the characters, to the people, to the real people in the story. And this is very important, and I'm glad she mentioned it because it just brought it back to my mind. Another thing is how she was able to adapt to changing the theme somehow. But even what I said about equipment and about the place, I'm going to say something very quickly. It might look as if it's outside this discussion, but it's not. I'm from Jordan. Jordan has Petra. It must have been shot bazillion times. Everybody goes to Petra. Everybody shoots Petra. And every time I go, my wife tells me, how did you manage to get a different photo? What I do is I fix one lens that is different that I used the time before. Sometimes I take a zoom lens, a wide angle, a fisheye, whatever.
Maybe you are changing between one trip and another trip also.
She's not only setting me up, now she is... Anyways, we will continue. Now I'm going to give just exactly 2 minutes, or maybe a minute and a half, for anybody who wants to elaborate or rebut anything else that was said, okay? So if you have anything to say, I'm giving you 1.5 minutes, please, because we want to move to these ladies and gentlemen for their interaction and questions. Donna.
I need to think about it. Oh, sorry.
Okay, you need to think. You want to go, follow me?
I just want to add one thing that what Alejandro spoke about time. It's also very important in your portfolio of stories, in your story portfolio, that time comes through in the work, that whether it's your 30 photos or 50 photos that you're putting together, there has to be a passage of time that shows in the work, and that's a very important factor, and I thought I forgot that, so I should have
Very
said
good.
that.
Alejandro or Mariam, anybody wants to?
I make this joke with you about changing, but I think it's really important, and it's connected to what Donna says before. I mean, you photography what you are, basically. I mean, you need to know who you are to photography, and who you are is something changing all the time. So it's important to listen to yourself, to adapt also your way of photographing to what you are in the moment that you are doing. It's why sometimes I really don't understand how people can photography all the time in the same way, as I think that we are an evolving persons, and the photography had to
Excellent.
represent how we are changing, how we are getting mature,
Excellent.
how we are
Excellent thought. Excellent.
growing as a person, and it's why I make this joke with you. Maybe you are just looking in a different way, not only changing your lens.
I think this is an excellent point.
Mm-hmm.
I think development, becoming mature, and changing is just like the way we used to tell jokes when we were little, and then we grew up. We'd have different way of saying things, and it's the same tool in our hand, but it's us that have changed. Excellent. Go ahead, Alejandro.
I was just going to add that when you were just mentioning by the end of the talk, you were mentioning the importance of the stories of the photos are people in the. I mean, people in the stories are the important thing. No, not
us.
Not us photographing, which is I agree. I agree, but at the same time, I think it's very important to enhance the idea that it's very important that the topic and the people you're working with, the topic is somehow you have a connection with it, because otherwise I feel I think it feels when the photographer it doesn't have the connection, and then the stories are important, but it's very hard to connect with the photos if the photographer is not very well connected. I mean, I think it's something very it's an interesting discussion, and it goes to probably we were before talking about conflict photography, war photography, that photographers are, they don't know anybody in the field, and sometimes photographers are not very much connected with the conflict either. So for me personally, I feel sometimes it's tricky, and I all the time think about the importance of being connected with the topics we are photographing.
I think, in my opinion, my humble opinion, I think our mission as photographers is just to have people looking at our photos forget that we or our cameras were there. I just like to have people think that they are standing, we were standing. To remove the idea of the photographer standing there. It's just as if he has entered and he stood in your place. But what I said is related to not just being unfair and just being making judgment on people like she started. It's definitely not making connection. You cannot create a story if you don't make a connection. This is extremely important. Would you like to go, Donna?
What's interesting also with the story that Alejandro has just told us about his grandparents and why it moved you so much is that when you are photographing your family or yourself, it's more difficult than photographing people you don't know, strangers. Let me explain why. When you are photographing strangers, you're doing your best to make good pictures, to probably have it featured in a magazine. And whatever happens with that story, you will usually get very little criticism from the people in the pictures. They don't understand what photographs can do. They don't even understand that these photographs can maybe ruin their lives, can cause great problems for them. And usually a photographer who is new in those situations, new to the strangers' lives, is a little bit oblivious about their responsibility to really protect the people in the pictures. But when you're photographing your family, your grandparents, where you come from, you are open to being criticized and judged in your own family. And so you work much harder to show the relationships, to show the what it really means and why it's about love. You have to be trusted. If you're in your family and photographing them in very personal ways, showing problems, showing mental disability, physical disability, violence, any kind of a flaw, you're going to be criticized in your family and maybe even become a pariah in your family that you use them. So it's really a brave thing to photograph your family, because what we all have to do is photograph with more empathy. We have to understand the suffering of people, whether they're family
Dana.
or
I have to stop
strangers.
you because you have to go.
We need to
Right,
have that
yeah.
empathy. Yes,
Okay.
well, what are you saying,
Yeah,
Mr. Talley?
we just want to go with the question. Thank you very much. Before we start, I also want to commend Dana on the concept she brought in, which is the moral responsibility of telling such stories. This is very important. And thank you very much. I'm going to take the questions of the audience. Start where?
Thank you, friends, for the very interesting thing. There's much more than a passing comment, though. You're ask to what extent panelists feel that moral and ethical behavior should determine and influence your work as a
Would you
long-form
like to
photographer.
direct your question to a specific person? No, because
No, I don't. I'd like
no,
to direct
I'd
it
rather,
to
I'd
all.
rather if you do, because then I don't want everybody. Anybody wants to pick up the answer? Follow me. Okay, you have the.
So the question is how much moral and ethical. Well, it's extremely important because let's just say the people you photograph are not you call them your subjects, but they're not really your subjects, are they? Like for me, when I photograph, because I work with a lot of women who undergo sort of normalized violence and things as well, so I'm always crossing that gray line where, you can step over onto the other side and cross the line, or you can be like, I've seen women getting beaten up, and whether you should photograph that or whether you should step up or help that person, So in a specific situation, I would give an example, was when I was passing in a village and I saw a girl was getting beaten up continuously because she walked into a man's house because she was menstruating, and she was in an exile, and she was not allowed to walk into anybody's home because she's an untouchable and a polluting agent, and they believed that she would bring calamity. So the man was beating her up, and he got a traditional healer to beat her up and cleanse her of her sins, and I was witness to that because I was there, and whilst I had to pick up my camera to photograph, to show the kind of dominance he had over this little girl who was barely 13, fragile, I just had to stop him, But knowing the fact that you're an outsider and going into that situation and trying to stop the person can actually end up creating more harm for the girl after you leave the place. Because we as outsiders will always leave. It's the people who get to stay behind, what happens to them. So what I did was I just dissipated the situation by telling them I was feeling very ill, I was a traveler, and I needed some tea and help. So I diverted the whole attention to myself rather than from the girl. So I used a very passive way to sort of divert the situation, and in a way ended up sort of helping her from getting beaten up without actively going and saying, hey man, you can't do this because this is wrong, because we can't say that. Because if we say that, we leave, the girl gets beaten up more, because the anger, people who do these things have a lot of rage in them, and so we have a lot of responsibility, these are actual people, they open their lives to you, so you have to be able to give them, you have to give them. So yeah, we're humans first and photographers second. We're humans first, so that's the most important thing.
Thank you very much. Second question.
I think that as a photographer, exactly as Polomi say, we as human, we can fail on that. But I think that we have always a second chance, and is how we are going to use the picture. I mean, maybe we are not reacting in the correct way and while we are taking, because it can be a very stressful situation. I mean, I can't imagine what is the situation she was explaining. It can be, you can really be confusing in this moment. But hopefully, we have a second change to make a proper choice, and it's how we are going to present these images, how we are going to use them, in which context we are going to put them. So if we fail twice, then we are really maybe responsible about what we are doing.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, thank you for this project that you make as a photographer today. It's very much driven by what is provoking emotions and what the audience would demand. And I'll give you an example. You know, I was very young and I was opening National Geographic book, and it was all a fantastic view to the beautiful world that we live in. But today, when you open it, it's all famine, war, disaster. So how far have we come from this change of mentality and the change of photographers' attitude and responsibility, as you mentioned, in changing and depicting pictures that are now all to do with problems, issues, social issues, environmental issues, and so on. And when you come as a photographer to choose your next subject and project, how much are you influenced by what is really demanded in the market?
But you're really the market demand. What is it? What?
Yeah, what is demanded by the market
okay.
today? I mean, today everybody wants to listen to the political issues, the wars, and so on.
Okay.
So I'm just going to say something short, so maybe they will say some things more interesting or different things. I think just that when you start working with some topic, there is kind of the necessity of the conflict of it's a base of working with something, because it comes to the roots of why we do what we do. So I think being a photographer, or could be, I said the same, could be another media, but trying to say something about anything, it's because it's a way of dealing with the things that surround us. So I think it's very hard to connect, as a photographer, to connect with the topic if there is no conflict, if nothing is happening in terms of a problem, something that you want to learn about, something you want to connect about. So I think that is the base of being in. I don't think very much. Maybe some photographers are more related to think of what the media or what the people could be expecting. But I think the base of the thing is that there should be a conflict somehow because of this I just said. I don't know what.
I think if you wish, just allow me for a
Well,
minute. Yeah, just go ahead.
We look at what happened after the U.S. invaded Iraq. When that happened, nobody cared about stories of regular people anymore, what they were going through. It was all about the war in Iraq. And if you did not go to war, you could not make a living as a photographer. So photographers had to acclimate to that concept, and things were happening so badly there. They needed to show that. That was their responsibility. They had to show what was happening. Nowadays, it's refugees. All of these wars, climate change, everything has destabilized. The Iraq War destabilized the Middle East in horrific ways. Dehumanize people, So, of course, the problem of refugees is essential. It has to be covered by photographers who are empathetic, who risk themselves to be there in these horrific situations, really sad situations, and show what's happening. We have to educate people. Today, photography has become something which is all about education. It's really not entertainment. There are photographers who do that very well. They photograph the celebrities, the fashion, all of that stuff. But we're all very serious people. We want to show what the problems are, and we want to show what's being done about those problems.
I think what Alejandro Adana saying is truly it's a profession. We admit that, but it's not a profession like, it's a profession that you have your passion with it. This is, you live day in and day out with it. It's just like something like you go to the office from 5 to 9 and finish and leave. You take, your work is all within your soul, and you feel it every minute. You dream it at night. So if you don't have an issue, if you don't have something that you want to show, I think the story would be a failure most of the time. That said, we also have to differentiate. You can have such people who are passionate and professionals, and they love their work, and they want to really do something, in comparison to photographers or reporters who just want to make a living, which is just, just show. I mean, we're just like doctors and lawyers and taxi drivers, and there are two kinds. There is some doctors who will really help and be really passionate to patients, and there are some other doctors who are greedy who just want the money. So we're just representing sample of the society. So that said, it's okay. Any more questions? Anybody from the side before we go ahead, sir?
How are you? My question to Alejandro.
Alejandro.
Yeah.
Alejandro, you're on high demand.
Yeah. He said that the pictures need long term as his family pictures or something like this. So I take picture before in Nepal. I stay like 1 month to take this picture, but no one like it really. Just 10 likes on Instagram. My family and my friend. No one else.
A picture of what, sir?
Mountain.
A mountain.
Yeah. And my next trip, I take another picture with my Snapchat. So it's like screenshot 300 or something. In 3 minutes, 4 minutes.
What were you trying to say when you took the picture of that mountain?
Like it's private things.
Excuse me?
It's private, but it's personal.
Private.
Something. Yeah. But the first picture, it take like 1 month to shoot it. The second picture take like 3 minutes. The second one take, or I received more screenshots. At the same time, he said it need long term for. I want to know when the pictures need long term, or which story need long term to take these pictures.
Okay, I'll let Alejandro answer, but I would say, sometimes you don't have to try very hard. Okay, Alejandro.
Because there is no formula. I mean, I can, and photography also has this really magic thing that sometimes things happen
this is good
in a very unexpected way, and you just run into an amazing picture without even preparing for it. But so there is no rules. I maybe what I was trying to say is like you probably, if you're staying for a while and you pay more attention to things that happen in an everyday basis, you're probably most likely to see some things otherwise maybe you are not seeing it. That doesn't mean that you cannot do it in the opposite way. You know, it's sometimes it's random.
I think what he said photography has its magic way. I love this. Yeah, but then this is really nice.
But
I'm learning here.
To address your question, photography is also a great deal about anticipation. You have to know more than what you think you're going to get from photographing a mountain. After you've seen all these incredible nature pictures, you should know by now that you have to wait for that amazing falcon to come flying at you, and maybe a little bird will ride on its beak, and you'll get that, because you have the right lenses. You have to have the right equipment. You have to dream about what you want to go for, charge at with your camera. Photography is not passive. It's not thinking I can just go out there and make some nice pictures like it's so easy. You may look at these pictures and think it's easy. These pictures are a result of 100% commitment, really being engaged, having questions, and responding. quick. You have to be quick.
I like this answer. تفضل.
Okay, I have question for Miss Dana. When you select your project for showing what's women, showing harassment and attitudes, are you choose it because you're interested in this topic, or you want to show are the society interested in this topic? And do you think it's before selecting this project, it's maybe profitable or not profitable?
Let me just, the last part, was it profitable or not profitable?
Not-
And then what was
did you
the
say
first?
profitable?
What was the first
What-
part of it?
Profitable.
With domestic violence, you were wondering if, yeah. What was the, what did you ask me about
what
that?
was the last sentence? What is the Okay, so the question is, do you select the project because you are interested in, or if it's money making?
For me, today is different, but for me, it was never profitable. To get the photographs that I knew I needed to get to make people really pay attention, I would work maybe for 9 months for $3,000 the entire time. For a magazine that might be just paying me my expenses and a $3,000 fee, which some people would say I can only work 3 weeks then, but I would work 9 months. I don't really care about money. I've been in foreclosure for 10 years. I fight the banks. I fight everybody. I don't care about money. I care about photographs and people and photographing people in very tough situations and trying to make sense of it. So for me, it's, what was the last question that you asked me?
Yeah. This is about there,
Is that
Donna.
it all? Yeah,
It's
money.
about there. You get the
I
answer.
really, in fact, I kind of resent it when the money becomes an issue, because
Wow.
you have to have pure intentions. Really, it's
Pure intention.
it's not about it's not about fame either. It's when you're doing the kind of work that all of us do, it's better to not be famous. Nobody talks about you. You're quiet. You're a nobody. The reason that I was able to take these tough pictures in people's homes for as long as I did, 10 years, was because I was just a little woman. What's a little woman doing in that house where there's violence going on and she's got a camera? Don't pay attention to her. That worked very well for me, being a woman, being small, being non-threatening. I move like a mouse in people's houses. But I'm really like a big elephant because I have a camera in my hand.
Anybody else want to? Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, while it's important to know that we make very little money, and it's really, as photographers, we survive because we believe in the work we do. We are not rich people. We just survive somehow. But it's important to note that we can really, through our powerful work, we can make a difference and we can make impact. So the picture that ended up, the photo that I took of the man trying to beat up the girl and, point a finger out at her, I ended up teaming up with a charity called WaterAid, and we ended up raising £2 million to make sanitary towels and toilets for girls in the end. So with a photo like that. So it's crazy that, we have to make those difficult pictures. They're hard. They're very difficult to make. They might give you sleepless nights or months after that, but, you can really
Yes.
change people's
Great.
lives, So
Thank you. Okay. Yes. You're next. Thank you. تفضلي.
My question to Donna is it? Can you hear me? Okay, now can you hear me? Regarding my colleague's comment.
Really quick, I want to hear what you have.
Okay. Okay. I asked regarding my colleague's comment. What about the marketing demands right now? Marketing demands. Marketing demands. Yeah. When you were saying about the crisis and the wars that's happening right now, and we as a photographer, we have to take some kind of pictures in this field, we are only taking a spotlight about the problem. We didn't take any kind of solution. people are seeing these kind of photos when they are checking the news, newspapers, social media, any kind of social media that you can see this type of photos. But we as a photographer, what kind of solutions we did for the community? For example, yesterday we saw the picture that won. It's a very nice picture and it's inspiring, but what's next? He only spot the light about the problem, which is like if she's a refugee or
Sound, please.
to another, he spot the light only about the problem. But what's next?
Let me just to clarify the question so I see if I understood. Ma'am, do you mean that as photographers, we have another responsibility beyond taking the photo and showing the
Exactly,
story?
because Mr. Tariq, as you mentioned before, everybody is taking the same picture, whether it's strategic or something like inspiring. Okay, this is fine, but what's next? My colleague said that it's now the marketing is changing that because like for example 50 years ago you can see pictures about nature, about something good, something negative.
If I say, let me say something and see if this sums up your question.
Yeah.
Do we photographers have a responsibility beyond taking a picture and telling the story? Is this good enough?
Nowadays I think yes. That's
No,
why.
no, I mean,
yeah,
this is what you're asking. She's
Yes,
gonna
yes,
reply.
yes,
This is
exactly.
the question?
Yes.
Okay, Donna, clear?
Absolutely, absolutely. We have a very big responsibility to go beyond a publication. We have, as photographers, we have to stand by our work. That's why I created many exhibitions back in the 90s. After I had done the 10 years of work, I started a non-for-profit. It had never been done before. It was even before Salgado started his non-for-profit. I knew that I found out by having one exhibit, and my book, Living with the Enemy, had just been published, and I was able to do a fundraiser for one battered women's shelter where they sold the book for a lot of money and made about $26,000. A light went off in my head, and I realized that I could set up my own non-for-profit and have hundreds of exhibitions traveling all around the world all the time and raising money. I only wanted to raise money for battered women's shelters, for men's programs, for children who witness violence. That's all I wanted to do, was raise money for them. And I don't wait for magazines. I don't wait for other institutions to do this. If I hear that a shelter is going to go under because the state isn't giving them money, I will create a fundraiser for them.
Yeah, but I beg your pardon, your work now transferred from photographer to someone
to
who's...
today?
No, on that day when you did the exhibitions,
Yeah?
your work transferred from one who's taking pictures to the one who's collecting money.
No, that wasn't,
yeah,
I wasn't
in
collecting
an
the money.
indirect way, an indirect way. You didn't do that on purpose, but someone who did the fundraising for you. Am I right?
No, I did. No. Please let me explain it. I didn't do the fundraising. I gave the people my photographs. They pay a nominal fee, $1,000, whatever. Then they use the photographs to create campaigns in their communities, in their states, in their countries, using all the statistics that apply to their countries with my photographs. My photographs have become the universal face of domestic violence. And so in that way, I don't touch the money. I get paid a flat nominal fee, and then they can raise as much money as they want, as they can. If they want to use the photographs as billboards, as posters, everywhere, I encourage them. If they don't want to do anything, I'm discouraged by that. I'm not as inclined to let them have the photographs for such a low fee.
Ma'am, I think Polomi have spoken about this, about how they collected 2 million pounds to do the sanitary work for the people there. This is the effect that her photo did, right?
No.
So,
For me, I'm sorry to disturb you, but the thing is, I'm not talking about money and how you can collect money beyond taking pictures. No.
She did
I'm
not
talking
collect.
I didn't collect money.
I
She
know,
did
I
not
know.
collect
You're
money.
talking about how the picture you were able to take fund from it, not for you, for non
No,
organized.
she did. Okay, let me. She did not take funds from the picture. Her picture, her story, instigated and made people active about solving a problem. So she had brought the attention of the people to a certain stage where somebody else would have to take over and move forward with the solution.
You have to make collaborations because you cannot be the hero. You're not the hero here. You're trying to do as your best you can to raise awareness and get the stories to the world. So if you really want to make change and you want to be a change maker, then you have to make those collaborations, find those partners who are more skilled than you are in disseminating the work and make campaigns and taking it forward, you know, and making those changes. Form those coalitions around you that can really make that impact, you know, because you can't do it on your own.
Plus, if Follow Me had changed her career and her job from a photographer to somebody who will carry on just one story, then we wouldn't have a continuation of her lifetime career. There are, you know, everybody knows, there are photos that stopped wars. There are photos that changed the course of history. This is, I think, their mission is to tell the story, and then somebody else will pick up on that and move forward. Thank you very much. Fadal. On. Wait for the audio, please.
The question is not as hot as those practical side of creating those pictures. Because something, I come from a school where you need to be upset, but at the same time, it's taking a long time. Can you focus on more than one project at a certain period of time? Or you should focus on one project at a time? And what if you lose interest? Is it okay to drop a project and move on? Yeah. And I ask those questions because this is personal suffering. Sometimes I obsess about something, the result is good, but afterward, I'm blocked. I can't think about something else. I can't generate a new idea. And this is the downside of obsessing about one topic for a long time. So about the creative process and your mental process rather than the technical side of it.
Mariam, would you take?
Do you want someone specifically ask it?
I would love to hear from you.
In my case, personally, I find extremely difficult to focus on many projects at the same time. I mean, I stop. But what I found is, for example, the first project I did, it was about drug abuse, and I worked 3 years with this project, and after that project, I really feel I need to do something lighter, something fresher, because I get so tired, and I get so frustrated, and I get so, I think even physically, I get a little bit sick to working so hardly on something. So I find a way to balance a little bit the kind of project I get involved on. I mean, I'm not able to work like Donna probably have done 10 years consecutive in so hard and so difficult and so strong topic, because I'm not able to do that. And many times people ask us, no, do you have help when you are doing your work? And no, we can look for help, but most of the time we have to find our own strengths and our own reserves to protect ourselves of all the kind of feelings that working on the story can provoke on you. I mean, when you're going involved in this kind of work that all of us are doing, we are all the time absorbing the energy of the things that we are living, and that's quite difficult to assimilate. Yeah, it's quite difficult. Exactly. So in my personal way, that probably they have other way to react, I really try to alternate. So there is a moment when I feel I can't go on this kind of strong topic, so I stop. I try to look life in a different way, and I sometimes find very beautiful or funny story to work on, and that gives me a lot of relief and a lot of energy to start with something different again.
Thank you very much. I'm afraid, excuse me, I'm afraid our time is up.
Can I just say one line? I just want
No, but we have, because I think this, what? I
just want to say one line that Miriam spoke about is very important, that we as photographers, we absorb a lot of trauma, we absorb a lot of thoughts from other people. So it's really important we take care of our own mental health and ourselves, you know. because as photographers, we absorb all everything. So it's kind of very important as you storytellers going out in the world, take care of yourselves while you're making those tough stories, because it's really important you take care of yourselves. So,
Thank you very much, everybody, for attending, and I thank our great panelists and guests, and extend our many thanks to the HIPA for the opportunity, and I really love this. I learned so much from you guys. I really feel so good about being with you. I'm so honored. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, everyone. Please stay tuned. After half an hour, we will start also very interesting topic. A hero, Hiyami, will be talking about the photography in his planet. Please, Japan. Yeah, leave them excited. Please enjoy some drinks and bites outside, and come after half an hour. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.